In 1992, 14 students disappeared during a routine school trip in Hartford, Maine. The last thing anyone heard was their driver saying, "They've been too quiet all morning. No accident. No bodies. Just silence for 3 decades. Then, last winter, someone heard whispers coming from inside the museum walls. Don't look away, and don't forget to subscribe. The museum was closed that morning. Maintenance crews were replacing old ventilation shafts beneath the archives room. One of them, a local named Dale Harper, heard it first. Faint, muffled, a voice, a child's voice. He froze. Help us. At first, he thought it was the radio, but the foreman had turned it off 10 minutes earlier. He leaned down toward the vent, heart thudding in his chest. Another whisper. This time it was clearer. "We're still here." Dale didn't finish his shift. He ran straight to the front desk, pale as paper, shaking. But by the time staff checked the vents, nothing. Just old pipes, rust and dust. That same night, the museum's security cameras. Again, glitching. 3 hours of footage. Gone. All from the West Wing. The wing built over the ruins of the old town hall. The same town hall that burned down in 1963. But the strangest part? A new signature appeared in the museum's guestbook that night. Written in shaky, childlike handwriting. Eli Turner, Class 4B. Eli Turner was one of the 14. The signature sent a jolt through the museum's night manager, Lyle Hammond. He'd been working there for over 20 years. Knew every creak in the floor, every dusty artifact in the West Wing. But that name, Eli Turner, hit him like a punch to the chest. He remembered the case. Everyone in Hartford did. Spring 1992, History Field. Trip to Maple Creek. 14 kids. 1 driver. 1 chaperone. They left at 9:17 a.m. They never came back. No bodies. No crash. Not even tire tracks. The only thing ever found was the lunchbox of a girl named April Groves, wedged between 2 rocks by a dried-up creek bed, untouched, uneaten. And now, 30 years later, Eli Turner's name shows up in a visitor book locked behind glass. Lyle pulled the book off the pedestal. His hands were trembling. The signature wasn't just written. It was fresh, still slightly damp in the grooves. A blue crayon, pressed hard into the paper, almost carving it. He checked the cameras again. Nothing. No. One had entered or left between midnight and 5 a.m. Except one frame. Glitched. Like a smear of static across the lens. And in the middle, almost too blurred to notice, a shape. Small. Head tilted, staring at the lens. Lyle paused the frame, zoomed in. A round face, eyes wide open, pale, expressionless. Next morning, Lyle called the Hartford Police Department. They sent someone from Cold Cases, Detective Nina Caraway, 39, originally from Portland. Had only recently transferred back to her hometown. She was 10 when the kids disappeared. She remembered the bus posters taped to telephone poles, the yellow ribbons on every mailbox, the silent prayers during morning assemblies. Now, 30 years later, she stood in front of the museum's West Wing, holding that visitor log. Looking at the blue crayon scrawled on its pages. And all she could say was, "Where the hell did he write this from?" The museum had no crayons. No children's exhibit. Nothing remotely blue in that wing. But the dust on the floor told a different story. Small prints. Shoe prints. Size 2. Barely there, but just enough. She followed them. They led her to a small utility room at the end of a service hallway. The prints stopped at a wall. A solid concrete wall. She knocked. It was hollow, but the blueprints showed nothing. Behind it. Just earth. Foundation. Empty. Crawl space. Yet when they broke it open 2 days later, they found something else. A gap, about 5 feet deep, lined with wooden planks. Old, rotten, from the 60s or earlier. Inside, laid out in perfect order. 14 small school bags. Each with a name tag, each untouched by time. And beneath them, a layer of blue crayon drawings. Pages and pages, taped to the walls. Figures, faces, a bus, a tunnel. And always a single phrase: "We never got home." Detective Nina Carraway slipped on her gloves and crouched down. She picked up the backpack lying by the vent. The name on the tag struck her: Sarah Bloom, 4B. She ran through the files in her mind. Sarah, one of the missing students. 11 years old, played Rapunzel in the school play. Her mother still bought the same birthday cake from the same bakery every year. For 30 years. Nina unzipped the bag, a thermos, a melted chocolate bar, a folded piece of paper. The writing was still legible: pencil, shaky hand, a few short lines. "Our teacher is acting weird. This camp never ends. The bus didn't come yesterday. Eli says he hears voices inside the wall. If someone finds this, please take us home." Sarah, Nina felt her throat tighten. The kids thought they were at camp, but there was no camp. No bus. No time. A bigger question formed. If none of them have surfaced since 1992. Then where have they been? And why weren't these bags covered in dust? Before the story hit the press, local police placed guards at the site. But for Nina, that wasn't enough. That night, she returned to the museum alone. Silence. Dust the faint wind. Cold air drifting through the broken window. She approached the wall where the tunnel had been exposed. And then, a sound. Knock. Knock. 2 short taps. Then silence. Then again. Knock. Nina held her breath, pressed her ear against the stone. Whispers. April, Eli. Wake up. It wasn't just that someone was inside. It was that someone inside could hear her. Just as she pulled back, the flashlight flickered. The light dimmed. One final flash. And then she saw it. Something she hadn't noticed before on the wall. A chalk drawing. Childlike. Rough. Bold, shaky lines. A crude school bus. N. Arrow. And 3 words, written small. Down. Through. Past the glass. The next morning, with official clearance pending, Nina returned to the museum under the cover of darkness. She brought only what she needed: gloves, flashlight, recorder, a crowbar, and Sarah's map. She stared at the chalk lines again. Down. Through. Past the glass. She took a breath, placed her hand on the wall, and began to knock. 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 Silence. Then a reply. Knock. Knock. The same pattern. The wall was hollow. Using the crowbar, she pried at the edges where the brick met plaster. 1. 2. Crack. A thin layer gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space. It smelled like damp wood, iron, and crayons. She crawled in. The tunnel was just big enough for one person. Cobwebs brushed her face. Her flashlight flickered. About 10 feet in, the wall turned to glass. Old, smudged, reinforced panes, like from an industrial greenhouse. Behind the glass, rows of school chairs, lined up in silence, each one facing a blackboard. On the blackboard, written in fresh white chalk, "Class resumes when they're ready." Nina froze. She tried the radio. Static. She leaned closer to the glass. Something flickered. In the reflection, she turned her flashlight back, and for a split second, in the dusty beam, a child's face. Pale, watching. Then gone. Her breath fogged the glass. Another chalk line below the board. Do not wake them. She backed away slowly. Was this a hallucination? A staged room? If so, Why was there a fresh apple on one of the desks? Still red dot, still glossy dot, no dust dot, and now she noticed it, a faint hum, like electricity dot, or breathing. She turned around, but the tunnel behind her was now completely dark. She reached for her flashlight again. Ed, she whispered. Hello? No reply, but then, under her feet, the ground vibrated slightly, like something was moving beneath her dot, and then the sound laughter children distant, echoing, but real. She closed her eyes, heart pounding. One question burned louder than the rest. If they're still alive, why haven't they come back? And worse, what if they don't want to? Nina took a slow, careful step forward. Her boots pressed against the gravel and dust floor of the tunnel, and she tried not to breathe too loudly. The laughter she'd heard moments ago had stopped, cut off like a tape reel abruptly spliced, but the air still carried its after echo, that lingering imprint of something that once vibrated reality. Ahead, the corridor split in two. To the left, another pane of fogged glass. To the right, a rusted metal door, half ajar, with a small rectangle cut out near the bottom, like a dog flap, but reinforced with wire. She chose left. The glass revealed another room, this one smaller. Like a library. Only, the books were all journals, worn, handwritten notebooks stacked from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of them. On the wall, a large piece of paper had been pinned with a kitchen knife. A child's handwriting read, "We write to remember. So we don't forget who we are." She stepped inside. The smell was overwhelming. Not decay, but old paper, pencil, graphite, glue. A school supply graveyard. She picked up a journal from the top shelf. Inside, sketches of trees, animals, maps. Then, faces, dozens of faces, all drawn in thick black lines, all the same, two features missing, eyes and mouths. Underneath each one, a name. Sarah, Eli, Jonah, April. Names she knew, but then others. Miss V, the listener, the man in the mirror. These last few pages were different. Torn edges, ink smears. One sentence was written over and over again, filling entire pages. He waits until you forget. He waits until you forget. He waits until you forget. Nina felt the pressure in her head rise, like an altitude sickness, like time was bending. She turned to leave, but the doorway was gone. Just more journals. Endless shelves, forming a maze behind her. And then she heard it again. A knock. 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 But this time, it came from inside the journal she still held in her hands. She froze. Knock. Knock. And then another voice, clear, whispering like wind crawling through cracks. He knows your name now. The light in the room dimmed, but she could still see. Somehow. And on the far wall, one journal began to glow faintly. Blue, a sticky note stuck out of it, written in red crayon. Page 47. Run when you get there. She opened it. Pages filled with frantic pencil marks, scribbles, frantic thoughts about how the school isn't real, how they haven't aged, how the stars outside don't move. Page 47. Blank. Then, slowly, like invisible ink rising from the page, she's coming. A noise from behind. Soft footsteps, but backwards, like someone rewinding reality. Nina spun around. At the end of the room, a silhouette stood, female, tall. Dressed like a teacher from another era. High collar, long skirt, hands folded in front. Her face was obscured by shadow. Then her voice, delicate, cold, unblinking. You shouldn't have come alone, Nina. Nina's breath hitched. The woman took one step forward. The journal snapped shut. In her hands, Nina dropped it. The shelves around her rattled, like an earthquake was shaking them. Books began to fall. The lights overhead buzzed. She turned and ran. A narrow space between the collapsing shelves, dodging falling notebooks and shattered glass. The whispering grew louder. Now names: Nina, Sarah, Eli, Jonah, April, April. She reached the tunnel. The exit was there, visible, just ahead. But just before she got out, she saw it again. That same chalk drawing. But now it had changed. There were more figures. One of them was her dot, and under the drawing, a new message scratched violently into the wall. The class never ended. It just needed a new teacher. Nina stumbled out of the tunnel, gasping, falling to her knees. She looked back. The opening sealed itself, brick by brick, silently and slowly. As if the museum wanted to forget it had ever let her in. She stared. At the sealed wall, the last thing she saw before it vanished completely. 2 small handprints. In dust. Facing inward, the air outside hit her like a slap. Sharp, cold, full of reality. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, the distant hum of a lawnmower somewhere in Hartford. But it didn't feel real. Not anymore. Nina collapsed onto the museum. Steps trembling, her hands filthy with dust and ink and blood that wasn't hers. It took nearly 20 minutes before she stood. Again. She didn't call anyone. She walked all the way back to town. When she arrived at the Hartford Sheriff's Department. Deputy Marla Vane looked up from her paperwork, startled. Nina? What the hell happened to you? Nina tried to answer, but the words came out in fragments. Something about tunnels. Journals. A woman. In the dark. Handprints. Voices. Her own name whispered through old paper. Marla blinked slowly. Okay, let's get you cleaned up first. 3 hours later, Nina sat in a small interrogation room. Not because she was a suspect, because she insisted on giving a formal statement. Insisted that what she saw was connected to the 1992 disappearance. Sheriff Lane came in halfway through. Face lined with exhaustion and disbelief, watched Nina like a lie detector. But when Nina described the chalk drawings, Lane's expression changed. She opened a drawer, pulled out a faded photograph. Nina, she said, voice tight. Is this what you saw? Nina stared. The photo was grainy. A wall, a child's chalk drawing of a class, smiling, hands raised. In the upper right corner, a new figure had been added. Rougher, less joyful. The same outline Nina had seen. That wasn't there when we found the room in '93, Lane said. We logged this photo before sealing the basement. That second figure appeared later. No one knows how. Nina swallowed hard. This wasn't just hallucination. Something, or someone, was updating that chalk wall. Sheriff Lane leaned forward. What else did you see? By nightfall, Nina was back home. She tried to sleep. She couldn't. Her walls felt too flat. Her windows too dark. Her mirrors too reflective. At 3:14 a.m. Her phone buzzed. No number. Just a video file. She hesitated, then pressed play. Grainy footage. Security cam angle. Black dash and dash white. A museum hallway, timestamped 2 nights ago. At first, nothing. Then, a figure. Small. Barefoot. A child. Walking slowly across the hallway, dragging something behind them. The camera GLITCAD. When it came back. The hallway was empty. Only a phrase remained, scrawled in what looked like charcoal across the screen's bottom edge. They're starting to remember. Nina dropped the phone. She turned on every light in the house. She covered every mirror. She blocked her closet door with a chair. But it wasn't enough. Because at 4:02 a.m., someone rang her doorbell. Once. Then silence. When she finally peeked through the blinds. No one was there. Only a piece of paper folded neatly on the welcome mat. She picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, a photo of her. As a child, standing with A group of students in front of a yellow school. Bus. Smiling. She didn't remember this trip. She didn't recognize the other kids. But in the corner, behind the bus, half shadowed by a tree, the teacher with no face was watching. Underneath the photo, one sentence. "Welcome back to class, Nina." Nina didn't sleep the rest of that night. The photo haunted her, not just the image, but what it suggested. Someone knew things about her she didn't at dawn. She packed a bag and drove to her parents' house outside of Hartford. The same house she grew up in, where she never remembered any yellow bus. Any school trip. She arrived just as her father was sipping his morning coffee on the porch. He looked up, surprised. "Nina, you all right?" She didn't answer. Instead, she dropped the photograph in front of him. "Tell me what this is." His hand trembled slightly as he picked it up, and then he froze. Color drained from his face like someone had pulled the plug on his blood. Where did you get this?" "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Just stared. Nina stepped closer. "I need to know. Was I on that trip?" Her father finally looked up, eyes glassy. "You weren't supposed to remember." Inside the house, her mother was already crying before Nina even asked anything. She clutched an old locked box, pulled from the back of a hallway closet. "Nina, please understand. We signed something. They told us it was for your safety." Her father added, "You had nightmares for weeks. You stopped talking. You drew things we couldn't explain. Then the doctors gave us options." Nina opened the box. Inside were a VHS tape labeled Camp Arrival -1992, a file folder stamped Property of Hartford Psychiatric Care, a child's drawing of a twisted building with no windows, and a school ID badge. Her own, age 9. And beneath, her photo, Field Trip, Peneglo Museum. She stared at the badge. Her hands began to shake. "How could you erase this?" Her mother whispered. "They said it was better if you forgot. That no child should carry that kind of memory." Nina took the VHS and left. She didn't say goodbye. Back in her apartment, she dug out an old VCR from the closet and pushed the tape in. Grainy footage flickered to life. The angle was from behind the bus. Windshield, children laughing, singing, and there she was, Nina, staring silently out the window. Beside her, a boy with a large scar down. His cheek was sketching something on a notebook. Freeze frame. Nina paused it, rewound, looked again. The boy's notebook had a drawing of the museum, but it was twisted. Wrong. Distorted. Like it had two entrances. That shouldn't exist. She pressed play again. The camera panned forward, and the bus pulled up to the building. Not a cheerful museum. Not what the parents were told. It looked like a burned-down asylum. Metal gates, cracked statues, a sign swinging on rusted hinges. Peneglo Historical Institute. Knowledge waits beneath. Then the tape cut to black. Not static. Just silence. And then a new timestamp appeared. August 12th, 1992, 4:16 p.m. Image returned. But it was no longer the bus. It was the museum's basement hallway, and one by one, the children began to appear in the frame, frozen like mannequins. Staring directly at the camera. Nina was among them. Only now. Her eyes were fully black. Her mouth slowly opened as if trying to scream. But there was no sound. Then one final message appeared in white text on black. "The walls remember, and so do you." That night, Nina didn't stay home. She returned to the museum. Not to explore, not to film, but to destroy. She brought gasoline, a hammer, a lighter. She broke in through the back alley entrance, past the rusted emergency door. She made it to the basement. To the tunnel. The journal pages were gone. So was the dusty mannequin. But something else had returned. The chalk wall. Now. Fully filled. Not just drawings. Names. All 14 children, written in childish handwriting. And beneath them, a 15th name, Nina Ashcroft, written in her own handwriting. As she stared, something moved behind her. A scraping noise, slow, metallic, like something being dragged across stone. She turned, heart pounding, and saw it, finally, clearly. The teacher. Tall, hollow-eyed, no face, his chest stitched with name tags of every missing child. He stepped forward. And Nina finally remembered. The stitched figure stepped closer. Its footsteps echoed like stone slabs, dragging over ice. Nina backed away, hand trembling over her lighter, but her fingers couldn't move. Her breath felt heavy. Thick. The wall behind her whispered, literally. Whispered. Voices. Children's voices. Faint, repeating. Don't look. Don't scream. Don't remember. The stitched man tilted its head. From beneath the torn hem of his collar. Something fell. A small, silver whistle. Nina recognized it. Not from any photo, but from a dream she'd had since childhood. A dream. She always forgot upon waking. The dream of a hallway. A cold hand and a voice telling her, blow the whistle, or they stay. She grabbed it. The stitched figure didn't move. It just waited. So she blew. One sharp, trembling breath into the metal. The sound that came out wasn't a whistle. It was a ringing bell, deep and cold, like iron striking water in the dark. The museum around her began to shift. No, not the museum. They. Walls themselves. They twisted, breathed, bent. Old wallpaper peeled. Stone cracked. And behind the names on the chalk wall, a door appeared. Not a real door, but a memory. Suddenly, Nina wasn't in the museum anymore. She was inside her own memory. Age 9. Standing in the penny-glow hallway. No. Stitched man? Just the other kids. Some smiling, some crying. Some already gone. And ahead of them, the teacher. But this time, he had a face. And Nina knew him. Mr. Calden, her 3rd grade science teacher. Friendly, awkward, liked puzzles. But now his face was blank. Not faceless, just expressionless. Like a man who had learned too much and decided never to feel again. He turned to Nina and said, you shouldn't be here. She stepped forward. What happened to us? Mr. Calden knelt down, his voice a hush. They took something from each of you. A fear, a memory, a voice. Then they gave it to the building. Whose? They? He looked at her, dead calm. You called them first. The memory collapsed. Nina was back in the museum, alone, but the chalk wall had changed. Now, in place of the children's names, a new line was written. One returned. And beneath it, a message, fresh in white chalk. Welcome back, Nina. Do you remember where you buried it? She ran. Out of the museum, out into the night. But things were different now. The streetlights flickered when she passed. Phones buzzed with static near her. Children on the sidewalk stared at her too long. And from time to time, she could hear it again, the whisper, not around. Her. Inside her. You brought the door back. 2 days later, Nina visited the Hartford Library. Not to research the museum, but to check the town records. She requested the school files from 1992. At first, the clerk told her there was nothing. Under Penedlow Field Trip. Then Nina asked for all missing student records from July to September 1992, and there it was. Case folder marked Unresolved, H1721 Field Incident, 14 minors, closed. No names. Just one scanned image inside, a blurry photo of a dirt clearing in the woods. In the center, a freshly dug rectangular hole, about the size of a large box. On the bottom, Someone had scrawled in pen, "We buried it where the trees forget their names." Nina's hands shook, because she'd seen that clearing before Dot in the dream, but not as a child, Dot as an adult. And she hadn't been burying something. She'd been digging it up. She didn't remember the hike. There. One moment she was in her car, scanning old forest maps. The next, she was standing in the clearing, the one from the photo, the one from her dreams. Tall, skeletal trees leaned inward like silent witnesses. The sky overhead was a dull gray. No wind, no birds, no sound at all. Dot just. The ground, Dot, and the whole, Dot. It wasn't there anymore. Not freshly dug. But the soil was different, Dot. Too smooth, too still, and something else. All the trees around the clearing had no bark, Dot. No moss, no branches, Dot. Just pale, blank trunks. She circled the space, fingers trailing along one of the trees. Suddenly, her palm burned. She looked nothing there, but it felt like her skin had touched metal, Dot, like the tree was coated in something ancient. That's when she noticed. Etched into the base of the tree was a word, not carved, burned in. Breathe. Nina stepped back. Another tree had a word too, remember. Then another, return. One by one, the trees around the clearing whispered her own forgotten commands, and at the center, the softest spot of dirt, where something was buried. She dropped to her knees, fingers digging fast, frantically. The deeper she clawed, the colder. The soil got, Dot, and then she touched wood, a small box, like a jewelry case. She pulled it out. It was wrapped in red cloth. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, a cassette tape, labeled in red ink, Peneglo, Room 7, final recording. She hadn't seen a cassette since she was a kid, and yet she knew what was on it. The screams, Dot, the chanting, the voice that told them, "Stay quiet, or you'll stay forever." She dropped it, but something in her refused to let it go. She picked it back up, wrapped it again, and ran back in her apartment. Nina didn't have a cassette player. Dot, no one she knew did. But a local college archive, one she used to intern at, had an audio lab. She didn't wait, Dot, by midnight. She was inside the sound booth, Dot, alone, Dot, the reel spun, Dot, static, Dot, a child's giggle. Then a familiar voice. "This is Miss Amber. Okay, class, one last recording before lights out." Background chatter, Dot. Then a child speaks. "Miss Amber? I hear someone. Outside. Probably just wind, honey. Let's keep going." Then, nothing, Dot, just 15 minutes of absolute silence. Until the last second. A voice. A whisper, Dot, male. Unfamiliar. "If you're hearing this, you already opened the box. So you remember what we made you forget. Now bring it back." The booth went black, Dot, the lights, the screen, everything, Dot, only the sound of the tape kept playing. Except it wasn't in the headphones anymore, Dot. It was in the room. And the final voice echoed again. Room 7 was never a place, Dot. It was the 7th one to vanish. And now you are the 14th. Nina's phone buzzed violently. She looked down, Dot. It wasn't a notification, Dot. It was a message. From her own number. "We missed you, Nina." She looked up. The booth mirror, once showing her reflection, now showed room 7, Dot, kids sitting in a circle, all staring at her, Dot, and slowly, all turning their heads, tilting, eyes black with static, Dot. She ran, but it didn't matter, because when she stepped outside, the world had shifted. The hallway didn't lead to the parking lot, Dot. It led to Peneglo, not the ruins. Peneglo as it was in 1992. Clean, intact, alive. Children's voices echoed down the halls, Dot, laughter, Dot, footsteps, Dot, the end of the corridor. Under a flickering light, a door. Room 7. The handle turned on its own, Dot, clicked, Dot, the door didn't creak, Dot, it didn't groan, Dot, it simply opened. Inside room 7, time had folded in on itself. It smelled of chalk dust, pine needles, and old paper. The kind of scent that doesn't exist anymore, except in memories. And yet, it was fresh here. The children were there, 14 of them, each frozen at just the right age, like wax museum pieces caught mid-breath. Their heads turned as Nia entered, but not a single one blinked. As if they'd been expecting her. As if they'd never stopped waiting. The chalkboard flickered. Not the lights, the chalkboard. The words written on it weren't just written. They shifted. Time doesn't move here. A new message appeared just below it, scratched by something. Unseen, but we remember. In the center of the room, a single desk sat empty. Its nameplate didn't say Nina. It said, Student 14, return confirmed. Her knees buckled. She remembered now. The rope swings, the clearing, the games they played. Beneath the twisted pines, she remembered the sound. A long, soft hum from beneath the earth. A mechanical vibration. Not natural, not explainable. And she remembered. The decision. To run. To leave them behind. Back then, she didn't understand why she did it. But now, they did. You ran, whispered a girl with orange shoelaces. And you left us behind, said a boy with 2 left gloves. So now, they all whispered at once. You have to remember everything. The fog in the room thickened, but not the kind you breathe. It was memory. It was weight. And it pressed in. A siren in the distance, but only Nina heard it. Not from outside. From deep below. The floor vibrated softly. As if something, not someone, was moving. It's almost time, whispered a voice that didn't belong to a child. Almost time for the circle to close. She turned to run, but the door behind her was gone. Not shut, gone. Replaced by a flat wall with one thing etched into it. Only one leaves. Her breathing quickened. She stepped back into the circle, but the children were no longer looking at her. They were looking through her. At something behind. She turned and saw. She turned. And saw. A man, but not a teacher, not a janitor, not anyone from Hartford. He wore a dark uniform. No badge, no name. His skin was pale, almost paper thin, and his eyes were too still, like they were drawn on. In his hand, he held a clipboard. But instead of papers, it was filled with photos. Each photo was a child. Each photo had a red stamp. Return denied. Nina's face was on the last page. No stamp. Just a note written in rushed handwriting. Last entry. Cycle incomplete. She backed away, trembling. The man didn't move. He simply raised a finger and pointed at the wall behind her. It was a mirror, but her reflection was gone. Instead, it showed the clearing from 30 years ago, the same moment, when 14 kids had gathered, laughing, throwing leaves, unaware, and then, slowly, one by one, they blinked out, not ran, not screamed. Just vanished, like an old VHS tape skipping forward, until only one girl was left in frame. Nina. She was frozen, mid-step, turning her head, but the image paused. Then it rewound. Played again. Paused. Again. Paused. The clipboard man spoke. Finally, we were watching long before the museum. His voice sounded like an old cassette, slow, dry, mechanical. You shouldn't have come back. Nina's voice cracked. Why? What is this place? He turned to the board behind him and pressed a panel. The walls around her shimmered, and suddenly she wasn't in the school anymore. She stood in a circular underground room. It was massive. Stone, lined, covered in carvings, symbols, not words. Each symbol glowed dimly. She could see footsteps in the dust, dozens of them. Small. Child. Sized. Leading in all directions, like a maze. And in the center, a chair, metal, strapped empty but humming. It's not a museum, the man said. A conduit, and it's never really closed. She took a step forward. The footsteps on the ground moved. Not hers. The ones already printed in dust. They shifted slightly, like echoes realigning. They're still here, Nina whispered. All of them. A low sound began building under her feet. A deep rumble. Not loud, but constant. The walls began to pulse with dim light. And then, somewhere behind her, a familiar voice. Tiny, echoing. Nina. She spun. No one. But the voice came again, closer. We remember. Her hands shook. She looked back. To the chair. Now it wasn't empty. Now it held a child. One she hadn't seen before. Face-shadowed. Wearing a school badge from Hartford Elementary. But the year printed beneath? 2024. Nina stepped back, heart pounding. This hasn't ended, she whispered. It's just starting again. The child in the chair didn't move. Not even a blink. Nina took one step closer. The hum grew louder. Now it was vibrating in her teeth, like the whole room was tuned to a single frequency. She could feel the sound, pushing into her bones. The child's head slowly turned, only a little, and then the lights cut out. Pitch black. Silence. Not even the hum. Just breathing. Not hers. It was shallow. Close. Right behind her. She froze, tears pooling in her eyes. Her lips parted, trying to whisper anything. A name, a prayer, a scream. But her throat locked up. And then a hand gripped her shoulder. She turned, ready to fight, but there was no one. The light snapped back on. The child was gone. The chair was gone. She stood in the middle of a hospital room now. Sterile, white, empty. One window. A bed. A clipboard. And on the clipboard, her name. Subject 02. Nina Harlow status. Recovered date of return. November 14th, 2024. She stumbled back toward the door, slammed it open, and found herself not in a hallway, but back in the museum gift shop. The lights were on. Soft, music playing, parents, children, laughing, buying t-shirts. She turned around. The exhibit door was gone, sealed behind drywall, like it had never existed. She staggered forward, bumping into a family of 4. Mother gave her a strange look. You okay, miss? Nina nodded, numb. But as she stepped toward the exit, she heard it again. A whisper. Nina. She turned. No one, except one boy standing near the snow globe shelf. He was staring at her, wearing a red jacket, holding a brochure that said, Come, visit the past Hartford Historical Museum. But he wasn't blinking, just staring. His lips moved, just barely. She squinted. He mouthed. We're still inside. And then his mother called him. He turned and walked away. Nina ran out of the museum, into the cold air. Snow was falling again, lightly, softly. But now every flake felt like it carried a message, like the air around her wasn't empty. It was. Watching, she pulled out her phone. No signal. The screen flickered once, and then showed her home screen. But every app was gone, except for one. A black icon. No name. She tapped it. The screen went dark, and a message appeared. Cycle restarted. Welcome back. Nina. Nina didn't go home. She couldn't, not after what she saw, or what saw her. Instead, she drove. No destination. Just trees, snow, and static from the car radio. The same phrase whispered on repeat through the static, barely audible. Come visit the past. Come visit the past. Around midnight, her phone vibrated again. No message. Just the same black icon pulsing. She pulled over, parked near a frozen field, and stared into the darkness. That's when her headlights caught something. Movement. A person? No, a group. Figures, small, barely lit, wearing coats. Children. She blinked, rubbed her eyes. Gone. She got out of the car. Cold stabbed through her like needles, but she moved forward. Toward the place they stood, crunching snow. Dead silence. Then she saw it, half buried in frost and earth. A single yellow seatbelt. Frayed, frozen stiff, Nina dropped to her knees and dug with her bare hands. Snow peeled back like layers of forgotten. Memory, metal, rust, screws, a nameplate. Hartford Unified School District Bus Number 18. Retired. April 1993. She screamed. The ground beneath her shifted, caved, and she fell. Not far below, a cavern. Artificial, fluorescent lights flickering above. In the corner, desks. School desks. 14 of them, lined in 2 neat rows. Each with a name tag. Each with a child's photo, yellowed with time. Each seat had one item, a red folder. She opened the closest one. Inside, a journal. Handwritten. Double quotes. March 12, 1992, Mr. But she says we'll be going up soon. He says the world isn't safe for kids like us anymore. He says he made a place where the whispers can't reach. I miss my mom. Every folder had a journal. Every journal was a cry for help. A countdown. The last entry of each. He's here. He knows someone found the stairs. We're not safe anymore. If you find this, don't open the door. Nina turned around. The door behind her creaked open. Soft yellow light spilled out. Footsteps. And then her name. Nina. A voice she hadn't heard in 30 years. She backed away, eyes wide. A man stepped through the door. Tall, gray hair, round glasses, a name badge covered in dust. Mr. Hartford, history dept. Her old teacher, the one who vanished with the students. He smiled. You always were the curious one. She ran. Through the hallway, past rows of lockers. Each one banging. Open and shut. Each one whispering. We're still here. Tell them. We didn't vanish. She reached the stairs, climbed out into the field, gasping. Behind her, silence again. The hole was gone. Just snow and stars. She returned to her apartment at dawn, locked every window, taped every mirror, unplugged every speaker. But that night, it started again. The hum. The whispering static, and a knock at the door. She checked the PEEPHOLE. No one. Then, beneath the door, a folder. Read. She picked it up. Inside, a photo of her at age 12, sitting on a school bus, smiling. Next to her, someone she didn't recognize, a child with no eyes, and underneath, written in thick black marker, last student missing, class still in session. Nina didn't sleep for days. Every night, the folder would reappear somewhere else in her apartment, on the pillow, in the fridge, once even inside her microwave, spinning slowly like some sick joke. Each time, the photo inside changed. Each time, a new child sat beside her. Each time, the child looked more real. The final photo? It showed her, not at 12, but now. Same seat, same smile, and next to her, an empty space outlined in black marker, labeled, Your Turn. She tried burning the folder. It didn't catch. She tried shredding it. It reassembled itself on the floor in the morning. She finally brought it to the police. They scanned it, bagged it, and sent her home. But that night, an officer called her back. Miss Kane, we found something odd. This folder, it's dated 1992, but your photos, from yesterday. This doesn't make sense. That was the last she heard from them. The folder never came back, but the dreams did. She saw the basement again, the bus, but this time, she wasn't a visitor. She was inside it, trapped, seatbelted, muffled voices all around her. Children laughing. Children screaming. And the sound of chalk on a blackboard. She turned slowly Dot at the front of the bus. Mr. Hartford, writing the same words again and again. We never got off. When Nina woke up, her apartment lights were flickering. All her mirrors were fogged from the inside. On one, finger-drawn letters spelled, "Visit the museum." That morning, she drove to the Hartford Historical Museum. She hadn't been there in years, Dot, and now it looked new, Dot, renovated, shiny, like it was waiting, Dot, inside. Everything felt off. The air was warm, but she could see her breath. The exhibits looked wrong, rearranged, out of time. A mannequin wearing a student uniform had her name stitched into the collar. The bus from her dream stood in the middle of the main hall. But it wasn't a replica, Dot. It was the bus, Dot, burnt edges, cracked windows, Dot, and inside, taped to the driver's mirror, one last photo. A group of children, Dot, smiling, Dot, and in the background, blurred but visible, her Dot standing behind them, mouth open, eyes wide, reaching out. Trapped in the frame, she stumbled backward. A voice whispered behind her, "You brought them back." She turned, Dot. Nobody, Dot, only a glass case filled with red folders, one for each child, and one freshly placed, with her name, Nina. This next day didn't speak to anyone. She didn't go home. She booked a motel 2 towns over, room 6, no cameras, cash only. But even there, the static followed her, Dot. The motel's old TV off all night, flickered on at 3:12 a.m. Dot. No channels, just fuzz, and in that fuzz, 12 figures, sitting in a bus. Dot. One seat empty, Dot. The same seat, Dot. Her seat. The phone rang, Dot. No one should have that number. She let it go to voicemail. The message was only 3 seconds long. Whispers, the sound of seatbelts, clicking, Dot. Then, "You're late." Nina ran, Dot, first to her car, then to the highway, then into the trees when the engine failed with every light on the dash glowing. Blood red. The woods were quiet, but not silent. She heard it again. Not a voice, not even a sound, but absence. The same absence that filled the museum, the basement, the photo. Dot. Something missing, Dot. Something watching. She kept walking until sunrise. Found herself at a rusted fence, beyond which sat the old Hartford residence. Long abandoned, boarded, burned once, rebuilt, and forgotten. But the front door was open, and someone had lit a single lantern inside. She stepped in. Dot. Old photographs littered the hallway, taped to walls, floors, even the ceiling. Every one of them showed the same thing. A group of children in a bus, but each photo was slightly different, Dot, in each one. The children aged, Dot, from 12 to 13 to 30, to skeletal outlines, still smiling, still on the bus, still seatbelt ed. Dot. In the last photo, dated August 2023, the children were gone. Only the bus remained, and behind the driver's seat, her Dot eyes closed, a smile stitched into her cheeks. Dot. Holding a red folder. Dot. In the corner of the room stood a desk. On it, a single tape recorder. No buttons, no display. Just a speaker, and a blinking red light. Dot. It clicked on by itself. A child's voice began to speak. "If you're hearing this, then you followed the signs. Then you saw what we saw. Then it's your turn to drive." Outside the house, the school bus had reappeared, covered in ivy. Dot. Moss on the wheels, still warm. Dot. The engine humming without sound. Dot. The door slowly opened. Should I continue, Kakem? Nina froze. The bus door hissed open, and for the first time she could smell it. Pine, but rotten. Dot. Dust, but breathing, like something that had learned to mimic bus scent. But Dot. The formula, just slightly wrong. The inside of the bus didn't look aged. It looked preserved. Dot. Rows of seats, just like the photos. but the seat belts were all undone. Now, dangling, swinging lightly, as if they had just been used. Every window was covered from the outside in red handprints. She stepped in. No. Floor creak. No echo. Just a low hum beneath her feet. Like distant chanting heard underwater. The driver's mirror tilted, slowly, all by itself, reflecting Nina's face. But it wasn't her face. It was her at 12 years old, wearing the same green jacket she swore had been burned. Her reflection smiled, but Nina didn't. The bus door closed. No slam. No sound, just a shift in air pressure, as if reality had sealed itself shut. The hum grew louder. So did the whispers. They weren't voices, they were memories, playing back in fragments. Not her own, but others. Mom says if we're good, we'll get pizza tonight. I don't want to sit in the back anymore. Did you hear that? Under the floor? Stop touching my arm. Don't scream. He's watching. Each whisper overlapping the next, until it became a blur of childhood echoes spiraling around her head. Then silence again, except one sound. Crayon, scraping paper. Nina turned slowly toward the back of the bus. There, in the last row, sat a boy, maybe 10 years old, drawing furiously into a red notebook. His hair was too neat. His clothes too clean. Like a doll, dressed for school. He looked up. I was waiting. Nina stepped forward, heart pounding. What is this place? The boy tilted his head. You already know. He held up the notebook. The drawing was of the museum, but in the place of its main exhibit hall was a gaping black hole, swallowing everything. And standing at the edge. Nina, you brought us here, he said. You opened the door. The bus engine jolted once, then the word glitcad. Like a VHS tape, skipping. Nia blinked. And suddenly the bus was filled again, with the other children. The same children from the photos. Older now. Paler. Each wearing a number on their shirt. 1 through 14 only. Nina's seat was UNNUMBERED. The children stared straight ahead. No one blinked. The boy in the back whispered, Say your name. Nina's throat tightened. Why? So? We know you remember. She didn't want to, but her lips moved on their own. Nina Florence Halloran. The moment she spoke it, the world cracked. Not literally, but in feeling. A sharp pressure behind her eyes. A hiss in her ears. The bus lights flickered. For a split second, every child's face twisted, smiles too wide, eyes too black. Then calm. She was back in her motel room, breathing fast. TV off. Phone unplugged. But the red notebook sat on the bed. Open to a page showing the Hartford house. Burning. A stick figure stood inside the flames. And underneath, scribbled, in childish handwriting, You're not done yet. Nina stared at the notebook for what felt like hours. The childish handwriting pulsed in her vision like it was alive. You're not done yet. She ran her fingers over the crayon lines, expecting them to smudge, but they didn't. They were warm. A knock at the motel door broke the silence. 3 soft raps. Then 2 more. She froze. Same rhythm as the bus door, latched from her dream. Heart. Pounding, she stepped closer, not sure if she was moving on her own or if something else was making her. She peeked through the peephole. Empty hallway. But just as she exhaled, she noticed something on the floor outside. A cassette tape, wrapped in a museum flyer. She opened the door, grabbed it, and slammed it shut again. Breath shallow. The flyer was from the museum's Voices of the Past exhibit, the same one that closed just days before the students disappeared. And on the back, written in the same red crayon, Play me in room 6. Room 6 wasn't her room. Room 6 had been closed off since the motel's fire in 1997. The door was nailed shut, windows blacked out, Locals said it was just storage now. But something deep in Nina told her the museum had never been the only place the children whispered from. She waited until 2:43 a.m. That was the time the whispers always started again. She walked down the hallway, barefoot, carrying a portable cassette player she had found at a thrift shop days earlier, for no reason she could explain. The hallway was silent until she passed room 4. From inside. A child laughed once. She didn't look. She couldn't. Room 6 stood at the end, boarded, padlocked. But the moment she stepped in front of it, the padlock clicked open on its own. The boards didn't fall. They dissolved. Behind them. Nothing. Just dark. But the tape began to play on its own. Static. Then a faint voice. I can't feel my hands. Did they forget about us? He said the door wouldn't close this time. Nina? She dropped. The player. Her own name. Again. From a voice she didn't know. But that knew her. A boy's voice. The same one from the bus. And then silence. Not normal silence. The silence. The kind she remembered from the woods. From the museum walls. From her dreams. She turned to run, but the hallway behind her was gone, replaced by fog. And through it, the faint yellow glow of a school bus. TAILLIGHT. Floating. Spinning. Slowly in midair. She didn't want to look, but she did. The bus hovered sideways. Doors opened. Inside, the children sat still. But now their shirts had different numbers, not 1 to 14. This time, just 13. And the seat where she once sat? Empty. Except for the notebook. Its last page half filled, waiting for her to write the ending. Nina reached for the notebook with trembling hands. Her name was no longer just written. It was etched, as if by a blade pressed too hard. Underneath, new words bled through. Finish the list. The air felt thinner now, like the walls of the bus, if that's what this still was, were pressing inward. The children on the bus didn't move, but their eyes followed her. Each of them, wide and glassy, didn't blink once. And when she tried to look away, her gaze snapped back like a magnet. The notebook grew heavier, not in weight, but in consequence. It was her story now. Somehow it had always been. She sat on the cold floor of the bus, if it was a floor crisscrossed, like a child at story time. The pencil was already in her hand. She hadn't remembered picking it up. She turned to the final page. The paper pulsed, beating like a slow, sick heart. I'm not one of them, she whispered, unsure whether she meant the students or whoever had taken them. That's when the first student stood up. It was a girl, blonde, pigtails, braces. Her name tag read Ashley, 3. She tilted her head toward Nina, and her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, behind her, another child. Rose, and another. And another. Until only one seat remained filled. The boy from the tape, the one who said her name. He didn't move, didn't blink. But the glass around his seat began to crack. Nina screamed. The notebook dropped. The page flipped. And this time, her name wasn't at the bottom. It was in the middle, surrounded by the others. Names she recognized. From yearbooks, from photos, from gravestones, from dreams. And then, written freshly, one final name below them all. Caleb Merrow. She didn't know the name, but something about it rang in her bones like a tuning fork. The bus lights flickered. The world snapped, and she was somewhere else. Same bus, same layout, but different sky. Outside, it wasn't night anymore. It wasn't any time at all. Just a static gray. No sun, no stars, only whispers. Thousands of them. Like every child who'd ever gone missing, telling their stories all at once. And Nina, holding the notebook, realized she could hear them all, but she couldn't speak. In the real world. The motel desk clerk Dale knocked on her door. Room 7. He'd come to check the plumbing. He knocked once, then twice. The same rhythm. No answer. He frowned, pushed the door. Creaked open. Lights off. Curtains still. But on the bed, he found the cassette player, still playing. A single loop. Her voice now. They're still here. They're still watching. Don't let him in. Don't let him in. Don't? The tape hissed out. The clerk looked around. Unnerved. He spotted the museum flyer. The back read, "She's almost done writing." Just below that, "And then he'll come for you." When Dale crushed the brochure in his hand and let it fall to the floor, he felt it again, that something was still watching. It wasn't just Nina the message was for. It was for him, too. As he turned to leave, the crumpled brochure began to fade. The ink dissolved, the letters disappeared, except for 3 chilling words: "You're too late." In the dusty basement of the Maine State Archives, retired investigator Irene Lawton was combing through old files. She'd reopened the 1992 case again. Hundreds of times she had scanned these documents, but this morning, something new struck her. 14 students had vanished, but only 13 were listed on the original bus roster. One name was missing, yet the bus driver had sworn. "I picked up 14. Irene scribbled in her notebook. Ghost student? Orchestrator? Then something else caught her eye on a grainy newspaper scan. Museum built on old orphanage land structural issues delay opening. The article was dated 1991. And beneath the headline, a name, Caleb Merrow, consulting architect. The same name Nina had written over and over before her final disappearance. Meanwhile, Nina was still there. Wherever there was, inside the bus, or the memory of it, it didn't feel physical anymore. The children were approaching slowly, silently. Their lips didn't move, but the air shifted, like whispers inside her mind. Each of them shaped the same phrase, "Finish IT." The notebook reappeared in her hands, but it was blank now. On the first page, just one sentence: "Tell the story or become part of it." Her hands began to write without her control. The words poured out like a dam, breaking. Images filled her mind, memories she never lived. A crackling fire, whispering voices at night, the echo of laughter inside museum halls, and then a face, ice blue eyes, a man who had never aged, Caleb Merrow. Irene jumped when her phone rang. Caller ID, Dale M., Motel 9. Dale? She whispered. Did he find Nina? She picked up, but it wasn't Dale's voice. Only whispers. Childlike. And then, "Tell her she's almost out of time." A scream followed, then static, then silence. The line went dead. Her hands trembled. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a warning. A countdown. She understood now. This wasn't only about missing children. It was a pattern. And she was now part of it. At the museum's facade, a new message appeared overnight. Nobody had seen anyone paint it, but it was there. You're already inside. Surveillance footage showed no one entering, but a shape, a blur, descended into the basement. Upstairs was empty. And from below, rising slowly, came a voice. 13, 14, and now 15. It was Nina's voice, but she was still missing, wasn't she? 1992, June 4th, Hartford, Maine. It was the second night of the trip. The fire crackled softly in the center of the camp clearing, but none of the 14 students were laughing this time. Their counselor, Mr. Rayner, sat stiffly on a folding chair, eyes fixed on the tree line. Something was wrong. Earlier that day, Jessica Mallory, age 12, had wandered too far from the group while collecting pine cones. She returned, different. Quiet, distant. When asked what happened, she only said, He said we're not supposed to be here. That night, she didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She stood at the edge of the woods, staring into the fog. Mr. Rayner tried to coax her back. So did the others. But she wouldn't move. At 3:09 a.m., a low hum began, almost like static on an old radio. Then a second noise followed it. A melody? A child's music box. When Mr. Rayner awoke at sunrise, Jessica was gone. And so was the bus. Not just missing, gone. No tracks, no oil trail, no crushed grass. Just open space where it had been parked. The campers' belongings still lay in their tents. Even Jessica's boots were right beside the fire. That was day 2. By day 4, 4 more children had vanished. One by one, no screams, no footsteps. Just gone. The remaining kids huddled in the dining hall cabin. Fear overtook everything: meals, conversation, even daylight. At night, the whispers returned. Always from underneath the floorboards. Always in different voices. And then they heard it. The voice of Caleb Merrow. He wasn't a counselor. He wasn't part of the staff. He was listed as a donor on the camp's ledger. A man who had helped fund the museum's expansion years later. So why did they hear his voice in the woods? Before the museum even existed? Present-day Irene had never believed in hauntings. But the evidence was no longer just historical. It was current. Dale hadn't returned her calls. The motel front desk said he checked out, but left everything behind, including his notebook and recorder. The final message in his journal read, "They're not trapped. They're feeding. They made the museum because they needed a shell. They made the camp because they needed names." Dale, 4:46 a.m., and beneath that, a red handprint, too small to be Dale's, too fresh to be from 1992. She closed the journal and whispered aloud, "How do you stop something that doesn't want to be found?" Her phone VIBRATED. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Nothing. Then a slow, dragging sound, like fingernails on drywall. And finally an old recording. A boy's voice, barely audible. "You're here now, Miss Lawton." Click, beneath the museum. A single light turned on. No one was supposed to be there. But if someone had been watching the security monitor that night, they'd have seen it clearly. A girl in a yellow raincoat, walking past the wall where the children's names were carved, the same wall that had been blank the day before. She turned, looked into the camera, and smiled. Present day, Hartford Museum Archives, 11:42 p.m. Irene Lawton clicked on her flashlight again. As she stepped into the archive room, she noticed the alarm wasn't active. Odd. The entire system had been updated just last week. Among the dusty files, one box stood out. It read, HM92, don't release. The first thing inside was a camp map, but not the public version. In the bottom left corner, a spot was circled in red marker. Cold Well. It was only 400 meters from the museum. The second item, an old videotape. Its label was mostly faded, but one line still showed, CM interview number 3. Caleb Merrow's voice came through, clearer than ever. In the tape, his head was tilted slightly, smiling. "I didn't make the camp. I just remembered it." The journalist asked, "Remembered it? What do you mean?" Merrow looked down. "It's not the first time. Not even the 10th. They come every 30 years. Always children. Always silence. Always a place no one notices." The footage glitched, then flashed. A single child walking through a dark forest. Alone. He wore a 90s-era school jacket. In the top left corner, a faint timestamp appeared, June 6, 1992. Unedited surveillance footage. Irene rewound. Played it again. Same date. Same child. But for a brief second, a shadow appeared in the background. Not quite human, but close. Tall. Blurred face? and in its hand, an old camp whistle. No sound came from it. Back to 1992, the day after the last child vanished. Mr. Rayner made a final note in the logbook. The bus isn't coming. The road disappeared. I've started marking the trees, but they always reset. I think the forest. Loops. The students' backpacks began turning up, one by one, but none had clothes inside. Just single strange items. A red ribbon in one dot, an old museum brochure in another. A piece of broken window glass in a third. But the strangest of all, Ella Chambers' journal. On the final page, only one sentence. We didn't vanish, we moved. And beneath it, a flipped sketch of the museum, almost as if it revealed something underground. Present day, Irene Lawton's apartment. 3:17 a.m. Irene had a dream. The children were staring at her from behind the museum wall, pressed up against the glass. Not aged. As if frozen in time, she woke up to her phone, ringing again. Unknown number. She didn't answer, but a message came in. A photo, captured that very morning by the museum security. Cameras. In the hallway, right in front of the graffiti wall, someone was standing, wearing a yellow raincoat. And just below their feet, written in red ink, "You're almost ready to see." And still no one knows. Is this just an echo of the past? Or is it Irene's turn now? March 12, 2025. Hartford Museum renovation site. 4:06 p.m. construction crews began drilling under the west wing, prepping the foundation for the new children's wing. At 4:06 p.m., the drill struck something hard. Not concrete, not stone. It was metal. They cleared away the soil, revealing a rusted, curved surface. Painted yellow. A school bus. Perfectly. Sealed. No license plate. No windows. Just a single phrase carved across its side in uneven lettering. We were never meant to return. Police arrived within minutes. The media wasn't far behind. Inside, forensic teams expected decay, dust, perhaps bones. But what they found made headlines around the world. 13 empty seats. Each with a child's name engraved on the headrest. Each still warm to the touch. And on the driver's seat, a tape recorder. One message played. We waited, and we listened. But you stopped asking. That night, the museum's lights flickered violently. Every speaker, even ones not connected, emitted a single sentence in a child's voice. Do you hear it now? And in the days that followed, more questions surfaced. Why was the bus directly beneath the museum? How were the seats still warm? And most disturbing of all, why did the names carved into the headrests now include Irene Lawton? She was never on the original trip. At least, not in 1992. Now it's your turn to ask. Were they really taken? Or did they leave something behind for us? Are they still waiting?